Brady's going to pull up Jim's talk here.
He wants me to wait for him.
No, he said it was good. This is good for now?
I'll put it up in a second.
In how, oh, okay.
I'll mount it for when I'm ready. I'm gonna, yeah.
He's gonna talk.
Okay. This is Jim Holik, our fearless leader. Jim, if you could stand right on that UNOLS sticker and keep the microphone.
Thank you. Hi, all. Gosh, this is almost normal again, isn't it? No. Except you all look kind of weird with those masks on. And so do all the people there on Hollywood Squares. I see them over there somewhere. One thing I think everybody here will agree on is that the technicians are a higher life form. And as such, welcome to the best meeting of the year. I mean, you got 4 days you can sit here and hobnob and rub elbows with all the gearheads and geeks and nerds of the fleet. It's fabulous. Where else can you have this much fun for 4 days and get paid? So my talk here, basically what I'm going to put up in a second was last year's talk. It's the same one, although this time it's in person. So pay no attention to the names in the little boxes because many of these people have gone, they were fired or they retired or they abdicated or they just up and quit because, you know, they're in an area of a lot of transition. But the point is that you should look at the way NSF works, because I get questions all the time. How does that work at NSF? It's not just a checkbook in the sky, although that's all you really need to worry about, but go ahead. Whatever you, oh.
It's over here.
It's over there, okay.
The one that says Jim on it.
Okay, this is in the big picture here. There's the director. We don't need to worry about the director. And there's the directorettes. And that is something we should talk about a little bit because we are in the directorate of geoscience. It's the red one on the bottom row. There's an additional one, which I'll just mention in a bit. But for now, just recognize that in NSF, there's all these directorates and we are geoscience. So I hit the space button. Yeah. Within geoscience, there's 4 different divisions. There's the atmospheric, there's earth science, there's us, ocean science, and then there's the Office of Polar Programs.
We also need to start the screen sharing. I'm sorry.
Oh. I refuse to start
The
over.
recording is
I'm never
going.
gonna remember.
They will have heard it, it's okay.
It's okay, you don't need to see this stuff. This is from last year anyway.
They're just watching you.
For next year's minutes.
Sorry. I need to-
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, everybody. I had
I
lunch.
can sing a little song. Come on down and listen to.
Okay. Here we go.
There you go.
All right, go to the next one. Let's get through with these things. I'm going to blast through these next. Okay, now we're getting more interesting. We're getting closer in. This is ocean science. Again, pay no attention to the people that are listed because most of them are gone or going. Most importantly is Terry Quinn, who's no longer the director, the assistant director. It is now Jim McManus, who many of you know. And he is now in that position. For information, all the people in blue are permanent people. The people in orange are rotators, part-time, and I don't know what the yellow means, but they're fabulous. Next, this is what's important. This is us, the facilities. First of all is our boss, Bob Houtman. All of us have worked many years. We've had many bosses in our lives. The older you are, the more bosses you have. And you can probably count the good ones on one hand. This is the best boss I've ever had. Unfortunately, he is retiring at the end of the year. So if you see him, give him your best because he's a good boss. He doesn't micromanage. So let that be a lesson to all of you who are managers. Don't micromanage and your employees will have jazz hands. They'll be thrilled. Below Bob is me, old me, and young me, proving that I was indeed a Marine tech at one time. Not a very good one. That's why I went to work for the government. And across is Rose, who's fabulous also. She's the queen of the fleet. And then Brian, who is here with us today, hold your applause. He's here to talk to you after I'm done. And then Jamie on the other side is also retiring at the end of the year. He is the program manager for ODP. Did I miss anybody? Oh yeah, down here it says vacant for program director for OOI. It is George Vogalis, the big Greek. So who's there? Did I miss anybody? Okay, let me continue on with some news and then we'll turn it over. Officially, now I'm becoming the official spokesman. We are again in a continuing resolution. Surprise. I've said this every time I've been up here for the last few years. 20 maybe. What that means is that we have a partial allotment of funds based on last year's budget. So I do have some money. You do have to really get into it.
Yep.
I do have some money. And I made some funding actions already this year. So if there's something, an emergency, or you need something right away, get in touch with me. We don't know what our 23 budget will be. So, and I'm sure Rob will say the same thing. We'll wait and see. NSF has a new directorate, which is called TIP, or Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. There's lots of money in that directorate. It's unclear, at least to me, and I'm just being honest, that it's unclear what that really means. What I think it means, however, is that NSF is kind of making a turn from pure science into a more applied science, or at least not from one to the other, but including more of an applied bent to it. We'll see, we'll see what happens. Okay, 2023 was supposed to be the end of the tech service 5-year awards. That didn't happen for a variety of reasons. I'd be glad to digress into, but I won't bore you. The important part of that is that you don't have to write a new proposal this year for tech services, but you do have to submit a no-cost extension. I will go over this more in the managers meeting next. Finally, the last point I want to make is that they just finished the URSO meetings, and they had a vote there, and they voted to continue to support the InmarTech meeting. So it will be an InmarTech meeting in April, May of this year in Barcelona. And I will cover expenses for anybody going there that makes a presentation. I encourage you to get your stuff together and make a presentation. In years past, we have been underrepresented. I mean, back when we had it years ago, we were underrepresented, and I think we have a lot to say and a lot to offer. So I encourage people to get a talk together. And that's all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Brian to give him a chance to tell me, to correct what I just said, I'm sure, and add some stuff about his programs.
I will stand here. She's making, I normally want, sorry.
I gave him a sticker to stand on.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Okay, remember back when we were ahead of schedule and on time?
When was that?
Good times, yeah. Not anymore. So quick show of hands. Who here thinks I know what I'm going to say? Okay, good. The crowd knows me. And I wanted to go after Jim. So as he mentioned, one, I know what he had to say, and then correct all the other things. But seriously, when he mentioned the TIP directorate, I'm an optimist, Pollyanna-ish, and I see it as a great opportunity. Oceanographic infrastructure, broadly defined, has benefited greatly from broad support. And I only see opportunity in this new directorate that's aimed at technology and innovation and all the things you guys do. I think we're well positioned. So it'll be we who, try to take advantage of the partnerships with this new technology directorate and provide new opportunities. And we don't call it applied research, use inspired research, and our use is to support science. So that's my stump speech I just made up. What else? I'm going to disagree with most of what Jim said, except Bob. Seriously, best boss I ever had. And he'll be missed. And he's been a great leader. And unfortunately, one of the things he's done is take care of a lot of things for our group. So Rose and Jim and I, colloquially refer to ourselves as the stool. We're the three-legged stool. We have to be balanced to support the academic research fleet. So Rose does the bulk of it. The ship operations, very complicated with scheduling and support. Jim has myriad smaller things he takes care of, including the technicians and the bandwidth and instrumentation and equipment. And my part of it is more limited, but also important. I handle the deep submergence, the National Deep Submergence Facility support, as well as capitalization. So ship acquisition and upgrade. I'm the one building the ship. So I'm going to get to where we're at with the current ship build in just a second. And hey, you put on, is that the next slide?
Yeah.
Put that up.
Hit enter.
All right, I can do that. See, I don't need help. Ha! I was going to wait for this, but this is hot off the presses. RVTEC at the shipyard on live streaming camera down in Houma, Louisiana. Just yesterday, that aluminum superstructure, the top part there, was added to the steel hull. So she finally looks like a ship. And that's a big milestone. So many of us are going to be down there in a couple of weeks for the UNOLS Council meeting. We're going to get some tours. We're going to take the oceanographic community aboard and then look around. And, that's my RCRV update. I'll get back to the schedule for it in just a second. The other big thing my programs have done recently is finish the upgrade to the Alvin submersible. Alvin is owned by our colleagues over at ONR, but NSF has been paying for upgrades to take the vehicle from 4,500 meters operation to 6,500 meters operation. That was successfully achieved this year. She's back in operation. She's done one successful cruise so far and is now currently working off the East Coast in support of some deep sea biology. So real happy about that. With regard to the ship acquisition, there have been some delays. I mean, everybody here I think knows that as well as anybody. And the first big hit was from the pandemic, and we replanned the schedule with about a 9-month overall delay in the delivery of the ship. And then right when we finished that replanning, August 29th of last year, Hurricane Ida decided to make landfall directly over Houma, Louisiana. What's maybe underappreciated is that Ida was the most powerful storm in recorded history ever to make landfall in Louisiana. People flash back to 16, 17 now years ago, Hurricane Katrina, which wreaked havoc on New Orleans. The metric for destruction I like to reference is Katrina knocked down 16,000 power poles in the area. Ida took out 33,000. And the region was devastated and is still recovering. And the impact of that to the project has been a negotiated 6 months of delay. But it's mostly because the local workforce, they lived there, their houses were trashed, and bringing them back to the yard to do the work has taken some time. So Congress, thankfully, provided $25 million to NSF to mitigate the impacts of the hurricane. We've been using that appropriation throughout this year to get the project back on track. And it looks like, you can see here, we're getting there. The delivery of the first ship, RVTEC, to OSU from the shipyard is scheduled for next September. So what delivery means is we'll begin the final outfitting phase. The science outfitting of these ships will be done by the operator institution, the first one being OSU. So that's a period of time of up to a year with the final outfitting and the sea trials and all the planned work that needs to be done to make sure these ships are ready to support science. They'll get the ship next September, and then it'll become part of the academic research fleet proper another year after that. The successive ships, RV number 2, Narragansett Dawn, which will go to University of Rhode Island and partners, will be 6 months after that. And then George R. Mason. God, I knew it. It was GR. The Mason, which is Gilbert R. Mason, will be delivered to the East Gulf Coast Consortium 6 months after that. So, one thing I wanted to mention, so I wouldn't forget, I leave it for last, is that what I was? Is with Bob's departure, my boss, he's been managing our ship inspection program since the retirement of Tom Janacek. And it looks like I get to do that now, at least for a while. So I did my first inspection of the Thompson just a couple of weeks ago. Next up, we have Sally Ride in San Diego, and then Kila Moana, and then the other 15 ships sometime this year. No, I can't do 15 ships in a year. So I'll get to sail and see many of you and most of you and get to know you a little bit better. So that's my shtick. I probably forgot some things about the government. There you go.
Thank you very much. Could you come up? I'll get his slides up. So, I have a UNOLS sticker here for you, and you can eat the microphone.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Rob Sparrock. I'm from the Office of Naval Research. I am the program manager for the Oceanographic Research Facilities. In reality, that means if Jim and Rose and Brian are the three-legged stool, I'm the little felt things that you stick on the bottom of that stool to help it move. I would reiterate, Bob is a wonderful boss. The job that Bob had 14 years ago is the job that I currently serve in. When I look at the NSF org chart, I see myself in there as a hidden line item. I'm a one-person show at ONR and can't do what I do without the support and in conjunction with NSF. It would really be impossible to do it otherwise. With that, I'm gonna go through 3 slides real quick. Some of them personal, some of them about ONR strategic vision, and some of them about my own strategic vision.
Just hit enter.
Just hit enter.
There you go.
All right, so I retired from the Navy 4 years ago. I currently have 38 years in the Navy, the last 4 with ONR. I have a pretty wide-ranging, diverse background, but it's all focused on ship operations, going to sea, engineering. So I've been both an engineer, both a deck officer, captain of a ship, kind of had a pretty wide background. In that time, I spent 9 full years as a student, 10 years at sea on 7 different ships. I have 4 years in the shipyard, including commissioning the Theodore Roosevelt, a nuclear aircraft carrier, and decommissioning a nuclear cruiser. I've spent 5 years as an instructor trainer, from everything from writing the Navy's counter-piracy doctrine to major combat operation trainer in the Pacific. I have 10 years experience as a program manager, both at ONR, on the Navy headquarters staff as the Deputy for Combat Logistics and Strategic Mobility, and on the Office of the Secretary of Defense staff, where we do acquisition of tactical warfighting systems. I have a degree from Scripps in Oceanography, from the Navy Postgraduate School in Ops Research, from the Navy War College in National Defense Strategy, graduate of the Navy Nuclear Power School program. And when I look around this room, probably the only thing that I have any expertise greater than anyone here is in nuclear power. I am super broad, but I'm happy to be part of this community because you guys have really all the answers. My first internship job, I was a meteorological researcher at the Los Alamos, going out and Jim has a great picture. I have similar thing working in canyons and doing meteorological research back in 1988. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to do that. All right, so ONR strategies. We are primarily focused on acoustics. In terms of all the federal governments, the Navy has primary ownership of acoustics research. In addition, we study marine mammals, but more so on how the marine mammals are impacted or mitigated by Navy operations. We care about signal processing and autonomy and machine learning. Those are things going on with us. We care about the Arctic, so we fund times on Sikuliak and on the Polar Cutter. You probably heard Amos mentioned. We are starting to care more about the seabed. We care about taking our ships to places where there are international partners, whether it's India or the Philippines. Even when we're done with our ships, we turn them over to other governments that we have alignment with. So Nor and Melville are still seeing service even today after 50 plus years with the Philippine and Mexican navies. ONR cares about STEM, particularly how it impacts our workforce and education. And of course, we care about the social media aspects of those STEM. From instrument priorities that you care about, we fund a lot of money on multi-beams, wave radars, gravimeters, sub-bottom profilers. We care about eDNA of marine mammals. We fund the Alvin. And although there's no real text from the aviation side, we also fund aviation instruments and aerosol detectors on an aircraft that specializes in flying at very low altitudes. I think it'll come up later on, but I want to thank Scripps for their support to Congress in order to provide a $4 million plus up that was used to improve cyber infrastructure here in the academic research fleet. Let's see. So if there is any way I can help you either personally, professionally, or financially, my interests in both STEM and DEI are extensive. I recently found out that I'm only the third African-American graduate of Scripps University. I will continue to fund mates. I will go to sea at STEMC. So I'd like to thank Skuliak for a great time on the STEMC cruise. Thank the Sally Ride team for another great time on STEMC. So I find those a valuable use of my time. I'm a scuba diver, so I support Diversity, which is a program designed to increase diversity in scientific diving at UCSD. And inside of my ship ops grants, I fund all kinds of teacher and other initiatives, from Float Your Boat, if anyone's here from UW. So I fund Float Your Boat. My near-term priorities are getting the Kila Moana a midlife service upgrade. Hopefully that'll happen in 2027-ish or so. Working on the scoping for that. Hopefully I will be around at some point and there'll be a weekly meeting and somebody will say something nice on my 50th anniversary, which hopefully I'll be around for in 2034. That bullet is probably replace the global class in 2035. It sort of sits there as like a little just one-line sentence, but there's millions and millions of dollars and a lot of work, and it's sort of the capstone achievement of this career that I hope to be able to leave the academic research fleet. Then, of course, long-term is the Sally Ride and Neil Armstrong midlives, which seem days away, or years away, sorry, decades away. I was sitting at URSO last week and I was penning some things down and listening to what Brian said. And if you think about it, hidden on this slide is I'm going to replace 3 global classes and 1 ocean class and 2 ocean midlives. And if you listen to Brian, you might have noticed that it takes about 16 months, maybe even longer, for a ship to appear to be there, but isn't really there. It's not providing services. So if you took those 16 months to replace each of those globals, that's 8 years of ocean/global class vessels that will be gone, even in a 1-to-1 replacement of the global class and the midlives. So take each of those 6 ships, say they're out of service. Not, when I say out of service, not providing research for 16 months between decommissioning and recommissioning. That's about 8 hidden lost years of service coming up in the future. So these are the things that I'm thinking about. I did want to take the time to come here personally to see you, so hopefully we'll have some interaction afterwards. Selfishly, I didn't want to fly back directly from URSO, so to Tampa, so stopping in Seattle was another great excuse to come here. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I love being part of this group. Thank you so much.
Jim, hey, Jim, could you come pick up your Diet Coke and say something real fast?
Okay, real quick, I want to mention that the managers meeting coming up right after this is to all the pool managers who are generally don't go to our monthly meetings. You're invited to go. Okay, so we're going to have a managers meeting after that. There's no great agenda. We haven't set an agenda, but it's a time when you guys can bitch at me because we won't be recording.
Sam, you're up, yeah.
Thank you.
And then Sarah, you're after that. Enter.
Okay.
Yeah, actually.
I don't know about you, but I always find this part of the whole meeting to be one of the most compelling parts, because otherwise I don't know this stuff. Sure, Jim may say he's saying the same thing over and over, but it's always new.
Sorry. Give it.
And this is when I find out about the timeline for the ships and things like that that are on the horizon. Otherwise, we just don't know. Thanks. You can stand on-
Oh,
stand on that
Yeah, I found it.
and eat the microphone.
Good afternoon. I'm Ted Colburn. I come from JMS. I'm part of the team that does the inspections on behalf of National Science Foundation and for the Navy and some others too. Going to go through a little bit how the process is in a quick summary, very quick. Can you hear me? Good, thank you. What's happening? All right.
Don't know. There you go. Just that middle one.
Push the wrong button. Okay, thank you. We were on hold during COVID, like so much else. And since COVID has passed a little bit, we've done 4 ships, finishing up with the Thompson just recently. And we're going to move ahead with a few more at relatively a slower pace than probably before, but trying to do a catch up. And so we've got the Sally Ride coming up to Kilo Moana, Armstrong, and Ravel. And Palma is penciled in after that, although I'm not sure what's going to happen on that one yet in terms of time and schedule. And when we do an inspection, there's a pre-inspection document package that goes out, and we get it back usually 10 days ahead. And then we come aboard, and Blake Powell does the operations. Bill Foster does the hull and machinery, and I'm lucky I get to do the science. So I'll do the overboard handling systems, and usually also one NSF or Navy representative comes. So Brian will be coming for a while. Jim says he might do or plans to do some of the East Coast. So save up your questions for Jim when he comes aboard, and save up your questions for Brian. And Rob usually makes it when we go to a Navy vessel. When we go aboard, typically we go aboard for 2 or 3 days. The larger vessels are 3, smaller vessels are 2. They have a dockside period and an underway period. We like to run, or at least in terms of science, we like to see everything in science and the overboard handling systems that support the science run. But in general, if there's some reason not to be able to run it because of some safety concern or otherwise, let us know. We're not there to break anything. We try not to anyways. We review the condition of the equipment and the procedures, and usually the training and maintenance as well. We provide an exit brief on the last day, usually very brief. We provide a letter, summary, and a report. So that's basically how the inspection goes. I'm going to touch on 3 items today. I cut back my presentation because I knew it'd probably be running behind a little bit. But I want to touch on Appendix A, Appendix B, and one thing that ties into DEI, which I learned that acronym this morning. I was thinking about it before. So Appendix A is ropes or cables and wire ropes. Appendix A and Appendix B have been around since at least 2010. So 12 years into it, we're still trying to get it in the fleet, compliant. Some places there's a long way to go, some places not. I'll touch on a couple things today that might help you. And if it's, well, basically, my objective is to report to Washington essentially how things are going. So I hope this couple things here help along the way. We are providing or have available Appendix A assist sheet and Appendix B assist sheets, and we'll be asking to have those filled out and sent in ahead of time in the future so that we can get a head start when we come aboard as to where you are. A couple things relative to the Appendix A. Tension monitoring is supposed to be kept within tolerance, 3% or 4%. We find that people sometimes think that the recalibration every 6 months satisfies that. My interpretation is no. It's kind of like putting gas in your car on New Year's and waiting until putting gas on there on the 4th of July, and you're not paying attention to what's going on in between. Normally in a car, you keep checking on that along the way. So in this case, maintaining accuracy means you check it along the way. here's what the PAMA started a few years ago, and I'm anxious to see when I get back on the PAMA how they're progressing at it. Essentially, there are error bounds, and you need to know, is it staying in the error bounds? Is it diverting from the error bounds, or how fast it's diverting from those? So there's a process there that you want to set up a procedure. We find this is one of the areas where I think on the ships, we haven't seen a lot of progress yet. Another is the extenuating circumstance plan. What happens when things don't go right? And so you have to plan for them. You're not quite sure always what's going to happen. And things do go wrong. So you develop a plan. It's kind of a fun thing too. You can sit around and talk and say, okay, what happens if we put the tension member into the propeller? Not a good thing to happen, but at least you've got ideas. You get hung up on the bottom. Do you choose to, what are the options? You don't have to solve the problem ahead of time on the plan, but you need to think about the options. So often, operationally, the first person that comes up with a thought gets it implemented, and then later on you find out, oh, we could have saved some cable, or we could have saved it, or we could have marked it. Do we have a marker? Even a fender or something like that. Do we have something that we could mark it and go back and get it later? So do your thinking ahead of time. It's kind of a fun project. Doesn't have to be extensive, but you should have that available, and the technicians are a real good source for thinking about things ahead of time. Another is that in terms of safety, think about employing the safety items pretty much routinely. Often I get on board and, yeah, we have the capability of putting a sign across, but it's not done routinely. So if you have a way of burying off, which is required under Appendix A, then routinely use it. Another item in Appendix A is keeping track of your max loads. And some of the ships have done this electronically. University of Washington has a subroutine that can extract it. And when you do that, it may be worthwhile looking at your max load. At what depth was the max load? Did it occur? And you may want to tally it from the drum end versus the free end, which gets cut off. So a couple of things there. Appendix B, there'll be assist sheets. I want to recognize Aaron Davis for developing the assist sheets on this one. So you'll be seeing those as basically each component has an assist sheet and the system has an assist sheet. So those are available. I'll provide a electronic to Brandy, if that can be put available. If you want it otherwise, also let me know. Basically, Appendix B is what happens if you get loaded. Things do happen. When I was talking to Ross Hines a few years ago, he told me about PAMA, that somebody had inserted stainless steel bolts on the winch instead of steel bolts. The strength of stainless steel bolts is less. They had heavy load. It sheared the bolts and the winch started down the deck. Luckily, it didn't go off. So if you want more details on that, Ross can fill you in on that one. But what happens on your vessels if you have a load that exceeds your expected loads? Something gets caught on the bottom line, a tension member gets caught in the screw, get hung up. What's going to break? And what should break is the tension member. Some of the tension members can have 20 to 40% strengths above their nominal breaking strength. So they can be pretty strong. And there are anomalies above and below that too. So what's going to break? Inspected vessels, it's basically mandatory that it's a tension member that breaks. On the uninspected vessels, you can have a weak link or you can have a render capability. But still consider what happens, because if you get into some situations, you may not be locked, you may not be held up at the payload. It may be like caught in the shaft, at which point you need to think about what's going to happen. Testing. This is from Sikuliak, where they were testing the side system with a forward, basically simulating a forward motion. The testing should simulate the process of how it's going to be operated. And basically, you should identify relatively worst case. We were on the Savannah, and this is quite a while ago now, but this 2013, we started looking at the A-frame, and it had cracks around where the hydraulic fittings attached. This is after repair. But before repair, we noticed some cracks. They went and repaired it, strengthened it up, and then retested it. Notice on this one that the tension member goes from the weight forward to represent where it goes to the winch. It's not just hung. When the Savannah was built in Boothbay, Maine, what I've heard is essentially the shipyard had hung the weight over the stern, just a direct weight. And when they finished that particular test, they said, just drop it in the water, we'll go back and get it later. Even luffing isn't the same as having that go to the winch. So your testing should represent as closely as you can the real situation that you're concerned about. That's A and B. We hope to get A and B further along. I'll be helping to identify how you're making out and reporting to the powers to be. The other part I wanted to bring up was something I became aware of. This is kind of relates to the DEI activity this morning, is to help prepare people coming on board. And in this particular situation, I'm thinking about the females that come on board the ships. One thing that's left out, it's nice to say that by the head, there's a sign saying no feminine hygiene products go in the head, or a number of other things wise. But for terms of it, prepare for all that are coming aboard and put the information necessary or that people would like to hear in your pre-information package that goes out. So this reduces anxiety and it's going to make things go pretty well, I hope, if you keep it in mind. There's one ship so far that I know of that puts the envelopes in the heads. And that's something to consider in information. With that, are there any questions?
We do have one question from Huma. What should we expect regarding inspection of cybersecurity risk management plans?
That one came up in Alaska. At this stage, I've been looking to see if there's a plan on board for cybersecurity. Also, just in general, to look to see if there's a log on that rotates or how things get logged on, and if there's some separation between the science access and the data access. But those, starting off, those are pretty much the first three.
Keep going. More questions? Ethan, who's not wearing a mask. What was that? Oh, okay.
So you're probably aware that some of the modern ships with automated CTE launching systems there have been several accidents in the last few years. I was curious if you had any thoughts on that.
For the audience who's online, the question is, what thoughts do you have about automated CTE handling systems that have had accidents?
Good question, Ethan. And you and I experienced a situation on the Skuliak a few years ago. Safety systems should look at conditions going right and conditions going wrong. The one item that came out of what happened on the Skuliak when we were doing the initial testing with the CTD is the CTD came up against the springs, and because of a no double or no two block system that was in the backup, it broke the CTD. Ethan was in front of me about 10 feet from where it dropped. I was right behind him. And we watched this CTD hit inside the vessel and bounce overboard. So I think we need to look at how our safety systems operate. And in that case, an independent two-block system would have helped that. And open to other ideas beyond that. Ethan, do you have more on that?
Yeah, so I'll rephrase it. Thank you for spotlighting our accident. Do you see so there's been several ships though now that in operation have these kinds of accidents. Do you see it as systemic, comparing to these new systems? Is it the way they're being manufactured versus the way they're being operated? So I'm curious more from like a systemic point of view.
Can you repeat that for the audience?
Yeah, I'll let you repeat it and then I'll think about that.
Is this problem systemic or is it? What kind of problem is this?
Don't have a good answer to that one specifically, but I will comment that it's good to learn from situations that happen on the vessels. And even though we may not want to necessarily talk about it a lot, as we learn, that will help us to prevent others. I think the new systems are really impressive. I'm quite pleased with it. We need to go through again a what if scenario so that we're looking ahead. Another what if scenario is that with so much electronics, what happens if something burps, something goes wrong, PLC fouls or something else? And part of that extenuating circumstance or the planning needs to look at what are the options. And for example, one vessel, and I don't know which one it was, been told, took the drum off one hydro winch and put it on the other one in order to pull back. Or is there a way of pulling back your CTD if your electronics have a problem? So by going through things ahead of time, you can learn. But I do think the technology is moving ahead well, and I'm looking forward to it as it keeps increasing.
So Ted had suggested that we go around the room and everybody stand up and give your name, and we don't have time to do that at this meeting. I'm really sorry, but if you have any questions for Ted, please find him and ask him because he's an excellent resource.
Thank you all.
Our final speaker before the break and the tours is Sarah. Hit enter.
Enter. I can do that. Awesome.
I'll move the camera if I have to.
Thanks. Hi, I'm still Sarah Kaye, U.S. Coast Guard C5 bipolar IT. I'm being adjusted. Do not change your set. And I'm here to talk about our high latitude communications on the North Pole trip. And this one was the Healy's fourth visit to the North Pole, second time unaccompanied by a heavy. We spent about a month in the ice and we had some fun. So standard commercial VSAT service, good to 80 north, no complaints about that. And I've got our service level here. We're paying for 1.5 megabits commit. So that's our minimum guaranteed level, and burst to 2 megabits. And honestly, most of the time we're at 2 megabits. To think where we operate, we don't have a whole lot of competition for bandwidth. And then there you see the standard satellite latency, 700 to 800 milliseconds. You kind of get used to operating with that. For the period when we're out of VSAT range, which was about 3.5 weeks, Iridium Certus was our workhorse. This is the second generation satellites. This is our first real time using Certus in production. So a few useful things that we learned about that. Data leakage, my first bullet point there, it refers to, this is a metered service. So we get 10 gigabytes of data a month. It does not roll over. So one of our first priorities was to manage our data usage. So first thing that we tested for is if we leave the service enabled, is it sitting there using data? And the answer was not so much. It was ticking up a little bit, but not very much. So we were able to leave it on all the time, which allowed us to automate jobs, and we all like automating. So we had some file transfers. We had size limited email over SSH tunnel designed by Adam Stenseth. Thanks, Adam. I don't think he's here today. We had some file transfers. our NOAA ice analyst actually brought his own iridium service system. So we weren't handling ice imagery, we were handling weather forecasting files. And the way it shook out with data, we actually could have handled the ice imagery as well. Since we are a government system, we did get a VoIP phone line at no extra charge. If we hadn't been a government system and for as far as ComSat was concerned, that would have been cost prohibitive for anything except for emergency calls. But it was there. We did discover that it calls out just fine. If you call back from a regular domestic US phone line, you get a whopping big phone bill. Ask us how we found out. So great for calling out. And we even were able to support limited internet browsing. Once we realized that we had a grip on data, we set up a couple of laptops on the Certus network, and that was really useful for folks on board. So our biggest drawback, and our service provider is ComSat. I know some folks have Certus systems. Anybody else using ComSat? I don't know if it's just them, but the data reporting was really bad. So it's reported as individual data calls. Their search function has a limit of 2,000 records, which in production is about 2 days worth of use. So every 2 days, we're downloading a new spreadsheet and then merging spreadsheets to get our cumulative data use. And then we discovered that it's over-reporting. So you do a search, say, for October 1st and 2nd, you're getting some data from October 3rd. So we were generating numbers that were actually more data than we had used. And during the process of troubleshooting and figuring out why our numbers were running high, I had the extremely entertaining experience of checking in with ComSat support and getting the response of, oh, yeah, you've used 9.42 gig of your 10 gig. Pretty sure I lost a couple months off the top of my lifespan from that one. Come to find out it was a new hire on his learning curve, and he was giving us the cumulative September-October number, and it was really about 6. So we've got a much better grasp on the data reporting now. So we'll be able to do better with our data management. But honestly, we were able to do much more with our 10 gig than I was expecting to. In particular, actually supporting internet browsing. We did disable Windows updates. Shh, don't tell Microsoft. We did have some session drops right at the North Pole, and I'm talking right at like within 10 nautical miles, which makes sense. The satellites are in polar orbit, so they converge at the pole. So you're getting faster handoffs between the satellites when you're right at the North Pole. Not really noticeable for casual internet browsing. On the phone line, I had a phone call drop after about 10 minutes. Did kill the SSH tunnel script. So we had to go back to running our email manually. But again, that was only right when we were at the pole. Really not too bad at all. And then I've got our bandwidth and latency, as you can see, slower than VSAT, but still totally usable. Latency, the numbers we were getting all over the place. Mostly I would say that the experience was, kind of the 100-ish milliseconds. So again, totally usable. Next up, what everybody is really looking forward to, Starlink. Wish I had more to tell you. It really isn't there yet. What we have on board is a prototype active antenna system. So I believe not the full production model that they're selling for mobile, but it is doing some tracking. I'm not sure exactly how much. There just wasn't anything out there to track. We had service leaving Seattle for about a day. And as soon as we got away from the coastline, it just went boop. That's the technical term. And then we had a little blob of service right around Dutch Harbor that dropped as soon as we got into port. When we're in port in Dutch Harbor, we're right up against Mount Ballyhoo, which is a very steep terrain feature. So little surprising that it just blanketed us completely. But yeah, no service in port, little bit service right around Dutch Harbor. And then on the southbound trip coming back through that same area, nothing at all. So they may have had it turned on especially for us. There was some back channel communications with Starlink through like a 3-person relay through different agencies. So we had some communications with Starlink, but not really very much. So here's the numbers that we were able to get in our very limited service. Yeah, sure, it's great. Call me back when they turn it on. So that's all I got. Are there any questions about that?
Pardon me for being a materialistic weasel, but how much does that service cost? Did that service cost you a month?
The Starlink or the Certus?
The service.
That was, so it's 2,500 a month for the 10 gig, but what they get you with is it's a 3-month minimum and you can't mix and match. So effectively it's a 7,500 for 3 months period.
Is that through DoD?
I'm sorry, what?
Through DoD?
Through DoD. No, we were buying the Certus service on the open market. We may get a deal through DISA eventually, but it's not in place yet.
I have a comment. Cecilia reportedly recently was working on C-Link KU band at London and That's just a comment though, I think, right? I think that's a, he's saying Carmen said that and it's a comment, not a question. Is that it for you? Okay, I have 2 comments here. One is that the managers meeting is now in room 107.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, this is my first time doing this, so that's my excuse. Managers meeting is now moved to room 107. R2R meeting has now moved to room 106 to accommodate the sizes of the groups. And again, thank you everybody for taking your honor-bound antigen tests and trying to wear your masks, because we've had a couple of actual positive COVID tests come back, and those people are not joining us in direct contact, but we really appreciate you helping us make this not be a super spreader event. Well, I think that's it. We take our break and then head off to the waiver training.
Yeah, so we have some guides waiting for you on site for the tours in Ocean Sciences building. You'll be guided by Rick Rupan, and in the oceanography building where the Puget Sound model is, Kathy Newell and Bill Michi will be there to show you around. And I've given them a heads up that it's probably going to take you guys 10 to 15 minutes to walk down there. So they should be waiting for you. There are maps to where those locations are in your folders. And you can ask any local UW person and they'll point it out. Any questions before we move on to the rest of the afternoon or tomorrow? Or
Should we leave things in the room?
I would not leave things in the room. It's unguarded. Also, when you come back tomorrow, I think if you come right in the courtyard and go down the stairs, people whoever's in that room will see you and they'll let you in. So all we need is one person in there to let everybody else in.
yeah.
Oh, here.
Oh, I do have one.
Channel your inner student and take home any extra food that's out there.
After the tours, there's no reason to come back here. There's a reception tonight at 5:30 in the Marine Sciences building with, I believe it's a cash bar, 5 drinks, and there will be snacks. Yes, Suzanne.
What time is group 2 supposed to arrive?
At which one? So one group starts in the Ocean Sciences building and one group starts in the Oceanography building, and then you guys switch after an hour. I don't know without looking. Yeah, if you're in the R2R meeting or you're in the hang on, sorry.
Managers meeting.
Or the managers meeting, then unfortunately you're probably gonna miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, your camera's.